My name is Emily Carter, and I was 32 years old when my parents demanded that family meeting. I remember standing in my apartment that morning, looking at my reflection in the mirror, thinking how strange it was that a grown woman with her own life could still feel like a child, being called into the principal's office. The message had come from my father the night before. Be at the house at 3 p.m., this is important. No greeting, no warmth, just a command. For a moment I considered not going. I had skipped their gatherings before, ignored their criticism, even blocked their calls for weeks at a time. But something about this message felt different. He didn't explain. He didn't threaten. He just assumed I would show up. And that assumption told me everything. Growing up, family meetings were never about connection. They were about correction. My parents believed they had the right to sit me down and decide whether my life choices were acceptable. They didn't ask how I felt. They didn't ask what I wanted. They told me who I should be. My mother liked to call it guidance. My father called it discipline. I called it suffocating. As a child, I learned early that silence was safer than honesty. When I spoke up, I was labeled ungrateful. When I disagreed, I was called rebellious. So I did what many daughters do. I shrank myself to keep the peace. I studied what they approved of. I smiled when they compared me to other people's daughters. I ignored the constant reminder that I was never quite enough. The first time I truly disappointed them was when I chose my career. They wanted stability. I wanted growth. They wanted tradition. I wanted independence. When I moved out at 24, my father said, "You'll come crawling back." I didn't. Instead, I worked harder than anyone they knew. Long nights, missed holidays, sacrifices no one saw. I built a life quietly, without asking for help or validation. By the time I turned 30, I was financially comfortable. By 32, I was successful enough that my parents couldn't ignore it anymore. And that's when the tone changed. Suddenly, my mother wanted details. Suddenly, my father wanted meetings. They asked questions that didn't sound like concern. They sounded like audits. How much I earned, where I invested, why I didn't share more with family. I realized something uncomfortable. They weren't proud of my success. They felt threatened by it. The family meeting they demanded wasn't about love or reconciliation. It was about power. I could feel it in the way my father wrote that message. Short, direct, unquestionable. At 2:30 p.m., I got into my car. I didn't dress to impress them. I dressed to remind myself who I was. Simple black coat, clean lines, calm confidence. No jewelry, no emotion on display. The drive to their house felt longer than usual. Every red light brought back memories. Sitting at the same dining table, while they listed my failures, nodding as if their words didn't sting. But this time was different. Because this time I wasn't coming empty-handed. When I pulled into their driveway, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. That's how I knew something had shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. I rang the bell exactly at 3 p.m. My mother opened the door with a tight smile. The kind she used when she wanted control but not confrontation. My father was already sitting in the living room, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Sit," he said, pointing to the chair across from them. No hug, no greeting. I sat down calmly and looked at both of them. For a few seconds, no one spoke. My father finally broke the silence. "This meeting is long overdue," he said. I nodded, waiting. He talked first, about family values, responsibility, respect. My mother followed, adding comments about how distant I'd become, how much they worried, how I never included them in my life anymore. They spoke like prosecutors who had rehearsed their lines. I listened, and that confused them, because I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just let them talk. Finally, my father leaned forward and said the sentence that made everything clear. "We need to talk about your finances." There it was. Not my happiness, not my well-being, my money. He continued, explaining how family supports family, how it was time I gave back, how they deserved transparency after everything they'd done for me. My mother nodded in agreement. I looked at them both and realized something painful but freeing. They never wanted a daughter who succeeded. They wanted a daughter who obeyed. And that was the moment I knew the surprise. I brought wasn't just going to shock them. It was going to end the version of me they thought still existed. I reached into my bag slowly. My parents leaned forward, curiosity replacing confidence. They thought I was finally giving in. They had no idea this was the beginning of the end. I reached into my bag slowly, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted them to feel the moment stretch. My father's eyes followed my hand. My mother straightened her posture. They were expecting something. A check, maybe. A confession. An apology. Instead, I placed a thin folder on the coffee table between us. It made a soft sound when it landed, but the impact felt heavy. "What's that?" my mother asked, already leaning forward. I didn't answer immediately. I folded my hands in my lap and looked at them calmly. "It's transparency," I said, "since that's what you asked for." My father opened the folder without hesitation. He always liked being in control. Papers made him feel powerful. His expression changed almost instantly. Not shock, confusion. Inside the folder weren't bank statements or salary slips. There were legal documents, cleanly printed, official, organized. "What is this?" he asked again, his voice sharper now. "That," I said, "is everything you don't know about my life." My mother leaned over to read. Her lips moved silently as she scanned the first page. Then her face went pale. "You did this without telling us?" she whispered. I nodded. For the first time since I'd arrived, I spoke with certainty. Yes, and that was intentional. The documents showed the truth they had never bothered to ask about. My company, my investments, the property I owned, the trust I had set up, the accounts that were solely under my name, and one detail they couldn't ignore. They had no access to any of it. My father closed the folder slowly and looked at me like I had betrayed him. "You hid this from us," he said. I smiled slightly, not out of cruelty, but relief. "No," I corrected him. "I protected it." Silence filled the room. My mother was the first to react emotionally, like always. "After everything we did for you," she said, her voice trembling. "You didn't think we deserved to know?" I met her eyes calmly. "You never wanted to know," I said. "You wanted to control." My father stood up. "Don't twist this," he snapped. "Family shares responsibility." I stood up too, slowly, evenly, matching his height. "Family also respects boundaries," I replied. "Something you never learned." That was when the tone shifted. My father stopped lecturing and started negotiating. He talked about how hard raising me was, how much they sacrificed, how I owed them. He even hinted at expectations, support, involvement, financial help. And then I revealed the real surprise. "I already took care of that," I said. Both of them froze. "What do you mean?" my mother asked. I reached into my bag again and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "I paid back every cent you ever gave me after I turned 18, I said calmly. "Tuition, rent help, emergency support, everything, with interest." My father grabbed the paper. It was a detailed record. Dates, amounts, transfers. There was nothing left to claim. Nothing left to hold over me. "You didn't have to do that," my mother whispered. "I did," I replied, "because I refused to let you use my past as leverage over my future." My father slammed the paper onto the table. "So this is what this meeting was about?" he demanded. "You come here to humiliate us?" I shook my head. "No, you called this meeting. I just finished it." His face hardened. "You think money makes you better than us?" he asked. I looked at him steadily. "No," I said. "Freedom does." That word hit harder than any insult. Freedom, because they had never wanted me free. My mother began to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to shift the atmosphere. She always did that when control slipped away. "You're breaking this family," she said softly. I took a deep breath. "No," I said. "I'm finally telling the truth." I picked up my bag and turned toward the door. My father spoke again, his voice cold. "If you walk out now, don't expect things to be the same." I stopped. I turned around one last time. "They already aren't," I said. And then I left. The drive home felt surreal. No shaking hands, no tears. Just a strange sense of peace I had never felt before. For the first time in my life, I hadn't asked for permission. But the story didn't end there. Because when people lose control, they don't always accept it quietly. The call started the next day. My mother left voicemails. Apologetic, confused, emotional. My father sent messages. Cold, strategic, manipulative. They wanted another meeting. I didn't respond. Then came the final move. A letter, not from them, but from a lawyer. They were challenging something they thought they were entitled to, and that's when I realized the family meeting wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the real battle, one they were about to lose. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning. White envelope, formal font, my name typed perfectly, like the sender had rehearsed this moment. I knew what it was before I opened it. A lawyer. Not mine. Theirs. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was something far more dangerous. Certainty. They were trying to take back control. The letter claimed that my parents had a reasonable expectation of financial involvement, based on years of family contribution and verbal agreements. It was written in polished language, but the message underneath was simple. You owe us. I read it twice, then placed it on the table and made coffee. That was the moment I fully accepted the truth I had avoided for years. This was never about family. This was about entitlement. I called my attorney that same day. A woman I trusted, calm, sharp, unemotional. She laughed softly when she read the letter. They don't have a case, she said. But they might try to scare you. Let them try, I thought, because for the first time in my life I wasn't scared. 2 weeks later, we sat across from each other again. This time in a conference room. Not a living room, no couch, no childhood photos on the wall. Just facts. My parents looked smaller there. My father avoided my eyes. My mother clutched her purse like it was armor. Their lawyer spoke first, outlining claims, expectations, sacrifices. When he finished, my lawyer slid one folder across the table. It was thicker than theirs. Inside were documents they never expected me to have. Signed agreements, payment records, proof of reimbursement, independent witnesses, and one final document, a legal declaration stating that I owed them nothing, financially or otherwise. The room went quiet. Their lawyer flipped through the pages faster now, his confidence fading. This changes things, he said carefully. My father finally spoke. You planned this, he accused me, his voice low. I met his eyes without flinching. No, I said. I survived you. That was the moment something broke. Not legally, emotionally. My mother started crying. Real crying this time. No performance, no manipulation, just grief. I don't understand when we lost you, she said. I answered honestly. You didn't lose me, I said. You never listened to me. The meeting ended shortly after. Their lawyer advised them to drop the matter. They had no leverage left, no money, no authority, no control. A week later, my father sent one last message. If you walk this path, don't expect a relationship with us. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. A relationship requires respect. When you're ready for that, you know where to find me. He never replied. Months passed. The silence was loud at first. Holidays felt strange. Birthdays came and went without calls. But slowly something unexpected happened. I breathed. I slept better. I laughed more easily. I stopped explaining myself to people who never tried to understand me. And then the consequences reached beyond just me. Relatives who had quietly judged me started asking questions. The story my parents told them didn't hold up. Not when facts entered the room. Some reached out to apologize. Some stayed silent. I didn't chase either, because the biggest revenge wasn't winning the legal battle. It was winning my life back. One evening, months later, I stood in my apartment, city lights glowing through the window, and thought about that first family meeting, how they had sat across from me, confident I would bend. They never imagined I would stand up, walk away, and never look back. I didn't destroy my family. I destroyed the illusion that they owned me, and in doing so, I finally became free.